one is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a pastor of Resilient Church and the author of the book You Need Friends. No other than Mr. Jake Thurston. Welcome to Book 101, Pastor Jake. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Pastor Jake Thurston. I am 31 years old and live here in Vermillion, South Dakota. Oddly enough, it's called the Miami of South Dakota, for whatever that's worth, So it's we minister to a lot of college students here. It's home of the University of South Dakota, which is really fun. We've been here for almost 4 years, so this has been really, really good. So love serving our community, love serving our church in that way. I have a wonderful wife that I've been married to for just over 6 years and 3 kids named Amelia, Adeline, and Beckett. They are my life and my joy. And I am also the author of the book, You Need Friends, Reclaim Your God-Given Design for Community and Remedy Your Loneliness for Good. If there's anything else you need to know about me, I love reading fantasy fiction, and I'm obsessed with Chipotle. So that's pretty much it.
Chipotle indeed. Will you be my guest on Food 101 and let's talk about Chipotle?
Sure, you bet.
Pastor Jake Thurston, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And why do you believe loneliness has become such a widespread crisis today?
Wow. That is a packed question, Daniel. There's so much to it, and honestly, it's been a trend that started all the way back in the 1980s, when at least in terms of the West in the United States. That's really where my research is grounded in. But we're starting to see these trends occurring really throughout the world. Right, we're seeing higher rates of loneliness all across the globe. But as far as the West, people who used to find so much of their connection through like clubs and church communities and being able to hang out on their front porch on a morning before work and in the evenings after kids go down for bed, like all that's changed a ton. I mean, look at our social landscape now. Before, like even in the 70s and 80s, kids after school, what would they do? They'd ride their bikes over to their friends' homes. Yes. And they would connect in person or outside, or they would have all these activities that they would do together that were shared, right? Well, now, I mean, especially when you look at the loneliness epidemic that's occurring in young adults, let alone just all across the board, we don't know how to get close with other people anymore. We have these amazing devices that make us connected more than ever before, but yes. The studies are showing more and more that the more time you spend on your phone, the more time you spend on social media, guess what? You're not spending that time in person with other friends. And so all that is driving a huge loneliness epidemic. But there's some other parts of our culture that we are really adamant about, in the American West, we're considered a radically individualist culture. And what that means, we value the self to a fault. You have free autonomy to become whatever you want to become, to be whoever you want to be, but often it is at the expense of other people. It's at the expense of being able to share your deepest needs and your weaknesses. So really, the loneliness epidemic that's occurring here isn't even so much that people are friendless or they have no friends whatsoever. When we think of just this widespread amount of people who are rating their loneliness at such high levels that they're just almost holed up inside their homes and they're not interacting with anybody, like they're just in solitary confinement. No, like people have friends.
Yes.
They're just not close. And I think what we're actually seeing isn't so much like it's a loneliness epidemic, but it is an intimacy crisis too. It's a connection crisis. We don't know how to find the friends that really can see us for who we are and can value us for all the things that we're going through. And we don't know how to confess and be vulnerable about those things. So it's clearly an issue that's really pervasive today.
Pastor Jake, how does our modern culture make a genuine friendship harder than ever?
What makes our culture harder to befriend people?
Reconnect, yes.
Yeah. So, like I said, if you think about our individualist culture, let's start there. I have two mantras that I feel like sum up two aspects of American culture that really are driving our loneliness epidemic and our connection crisis. First, it is individualism, and it is this phrase that I don't need anyone else. Um, because we value the people who are able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, get it done, right? Live an independent life. You know, you make everything your own. For us to confess our weaknesses, obviously makes us feel weak. Like where's the strength in that? Um, you know, like we don't want to come across like we're codependent or we're needy. How dare we even say, I'm lonely, I need friends, will you come help me? Like how petty does that sound if you were to
Yes.
confess that? Um, I mean, thankfully, conversations around mental health have gotten way more popular. Like it's way easier to talk about mental health concerns now than ever before. But I think where it was taboo to talk about depression and anxiety, you know, even just a couple decades ago, now we're seeing that similar taboo um, perspective on loneliness. It's hard to confess that you're lonely, and it's hard for us to share those things because studies also show that if you can have friends that you regularly connect with on a deeper level, where you share the things of your life that are hard that no one else knows about, your rates of happiness and uh, peace really do increase when you can have those people that you can regularly confess. So I think that's one piece. We live in a culture that says, I don't need anyone else. But then another side of our culture is, you know, isolationism. And it's this mantra that we don't even want anyone else. Again, we have all of these other contents that we can consume on our devices. We have, get this, the number one reason people consult ChatGPT now,
Yeah.
before it was for ideation, for creating new ideas, for brainstorming ideas and stuff. That was like the number one reason why people went to ChatGPT or any of these other AI consultants last year. This year, people are going to AI for companionship and therapy because
Yes.
they will give you everything you need to hear. We don't even want anyone else because friendship is messy. They might tell us things we don't want to hear. It's hard. They might leave us, right? And so it's just easier for us to stick to our devices, find our technology that keeps us holed up inside our homes, and not even talk with real people and rely on the internet, being consolidated through these chatbots to provide us a sense of community and belonging and being seen. How dystopian is that? Right. I could go into several more reasons of why I think is so hard, but we have all these forces that have now crept up on us that I think you don't realize how far gone you are until you finally realize how bad it is. And then you look back and we've been on this subtle decline relationally for the last 2 decades, especially since the smartphone has been largely adopted into modern culture. And so, yeah, those are kind of the forces that make it so hard for us to befriend others.
Pastor Jake, what does scriptures say about loneliness that might surprise people?
Yeah. So honestly, what really surprises people, whether you're a Christian or not, or whether you know the Bible or not, typically a lot of people are at least familiar with the idea that God created the heavens and the earth in 7 days, right? 6 days, he created everything. It all climaxes with the creation of humanity on day 6, and the seventh day he rests. But then Genesis chapter 2 is kind of another take on the creation story. And in that perspective, or in that story, in that take of creation, the earth is all made, and then he creates Adam, the first human being, first. And he says Adam is great, he's amazing, but we often think that the first problem God had to solve for humanity was sin. But that doesn't happen until Genesis chapter 3. The first problem God had to solve for humanity was loneliness. Because in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, he looks at Adam, he looks at the first human that he made, and says, it is not good for the man to be alone. It is not good for the man to be alone. So I will make him a helper that is fit just for him. And what does he do in that instance? In Genesis chapter 2, he makes all the animals of the land and all the birds of the air, and he presents all of them to Adam, one, for him to name and to get to know them. That was the first job ever given. He's basically a zookeeper in the Garden of Eden. But the main reason was so that Adam could find a helper who was just right for him. And that's a passage of scripture I think that just leaps off the page for people. We skim right over it, and we don't even think twice about how the first problem God had to solve for his humanity was loneliness in Adam. And we think like that just seems so insufficient. Well, the reason why God did it was because God gave Adam this ache that although he was perfect, he was supposed to experience that ache for human connection. It was the one piece that's like reminds us physiologically that we need friends, that we need human connection. So I think that's a passage of scripture that's really powerful. I think there's a bunch of other passages in there that where loneliness shows up and you don't even realize it. Like I just read from Jeremiah today when the prophet Jeremiah was called by God to preach to God's people who were living in wayward sin, and no one listened to him. No one listened to him. Talk about loneliness, right? It doesn't say directly that Jeremiah was lonely, but when you read a prayer of him saying, God, I am weeping because no one listens, that's isolation. You see it pop up. Even Jesus, right? Even Jesus was abandoned and felt crazy desertion and maybe even loneliness when he was betrayed. So you see it kind of peppered throughout the scriptures. It's a very common human experience, and it's something that God says is not good.
Totally is not good, people. And Pastor Jake, very well said.
Thank you.
Beautifully articulated. Let's talk about God designs for community. How is friendship part of our God given design as you describe in the book?
Yeah. So there's two sides to this coin. There's the theological side of the coin, and then there's the physiological side of the coin, right? We are psychosomatic beings. That's just a fancy word for we are mind, body, and spirit. There's three aspects of the human person. And so from the spiritual side, when we look at the scriptures, God gets to work. He recognizes that all these animals aren't cutting it. So finally, for him to fully make Adam into the image of God, to be a mirror-like representation of him, Adam couldn't be fully made into the image of God until God made Eve, because God himself is a community of three persons, right? He is God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. The God of the universe is himself a God of community. And so when he says, let's make Adam and Eve to be like us, for them to be able to connect together to where they could be fully seen, fully known, fully loved by each other and by God, we really see it pulled out there that like God designed us for a community. And we don't just see the first human marriage in Adam and Eve. We see the first human friendship. And then you see the whole call into covenant relationship throughout the scriptures. And God is actively working for us to be in relationship with him. And Jesus has all these other claims for how his church was meant to be a group of basically surrogate siblings for us to function like brothers and sisters in Christ, right? Like, which is just a metaphor for how deep of the friendship bonds people should have within the church. So there's the spiritual side of it. But then you go back to the science and you look at the psychology, and they say that you are the collective sum of the five people who are closest to you. That's because you are who you're with, right? We are
Yes.
designed to be in community, and we are formed by the people we surround ourselves with. So if you want to become someone who is healthier, or if you want to become someone who has better habits, maybe better work habits, or you want to have a better marriage, or you want to lose weight or quit a smoking habit, you know what's one of the best things for you to do? Surround yourself with people who are what you want to be,
Yes.
because it turns out you become like those you're with. So our brains are neuroplastic, or the neuroplasticity of the brain is the term of that. It can be molded and shaped and changed based on a number of the different experiences that we take in. Trauma, right, can shape our brains. Like the little habits we do every day shape and mold our brains. Our friendships do the very same thing. So they form us that way. But if you're embedded in good, significant friendships that love you and sees you, like it decreases your anxiety rates, it decreases your risk of depression, it pretty much eliminates your risk of suicide in a lot of ways. It helps you recover faster from surgery and illnesses. You get sick lesser when you're surrounded by good friends. Your immune system is better. You have better quality of sleep. There's even things where like how much money you make and how well your kids do in school and how and what you think, like all these things of your life are largely determined by the people you surround yourself with. Isn't that interesting?
Interesting.
So when I say we are designed by God to have friendships and community, it's just simply because like God created us to flourish. He created humanity to flourish. And when you look at all the other studies from a psychological and scientific perspective, take God out of the equation, the true root to happiness comes down to the people that are in your life. Doesn't matter where you're at, what you do for a living, how much money you make. It is the sense of community you have that is the number one indicator that you're going to live a fruitful, happy, flourishing life.
Again, Pastor Jake, very well said. Totally empowering. Tell me your friends, and I will tell you who you are, as they said. And Pastor, what will be your short-term and long-term goals as an author and as well as a pastor of Resilient Church?
Wow, that's an excellent question. Short term goals for my book. I'm hoping to have 1,000 copies of my book sold by the end of the
Yes,
year. I think I'm at like well over 700 at this point. So for being a self published author, that's huge and amazing. But long term goals, like I mean, I'd love to see 10,000 copies of this thing sold. I want to be able to bring this message to conferences. I want to bring it to university chapels and um, seminars for young adults. Like I mean, this is written to anybody, but it's particularly honed in to young adults since they have such high rates of loneliness. So really passionate about that, just to get the message out to as many people as possible. So that's a big long-term dream for this book. But I'm also hoping to like every 2 to 3 years to write a new book. I mean, get this, as a pastor, I preach 40 sermons a year minimum,
yes,
and they each average at around 4,000 words. So I'm literally writing like 160,000 words a year. That's essentially 3 to 4 books, that I'm putting in
true.
this content. So
Compile
I have some
them.
dreams of how to repurpose some of those and turn them into books that are spiritually formative for people. So I'd love to be able to keep that content out. One other book that I have a dream on writing it's kind of a follow-up to this, but it's more specific towards pastors. And actually
Mm,
writing it, the title would be called Pastor, You Need Friends. Because ironically enough, pastors, for how much we emphasize the importance of community in our churches, spiritual
yes,
friendship is crucial for churches and communities of worship of Jesus. Um, Despite us giving that for our people, it's really hard for us to find friendships. It's a very unique problem that so many vocations don't really face. And so I really feel like that might be a big future research project that I will delve into. Um, is why are pastors so lonely, and why is it so hard for us to connect, and what are some next steps that we can do for us to have our own loneliness remedied? So those are probably my long-term goals for being an author in some of my books. As far as for our church, man, we're dreaming about how we can just see a revival come upon our campus at USD, where we're seeing Gen Zers come to Christ and come to Christianity in droves like never before. And so when we planted our church, so we're a brand new church to Vermilion. We've been here for 4 years, but our church started 3 years ago. We're very young, but we launched this church with the hope of reaching the young adults that flood our city for 8 months of the year. We want to reach as many people as possible, but we really want to reach students in particular. So we have big dreams of some facilities that we can occupy for us to be able to facilitate, create the structures necessary to support an influx of what we believe God is doing in these young people. So we're dreaming about that. A number of fun programs that we want to launch to reach more family members in our community. We want to launch like a Parents Night Out program where every month parents can drop off their kids at our facility, where we have a bunch of fun and games and pizza, while parents can have a night out to do errands and maybe, just feel like they can have a break from the chaos a little bit. We can pour into them that way. I mean, I could go on and on and on about some of our dreams. What does it look like for us to plant 10 churches in the next 20 years? So to plant one church per 2 years, like those are some of the things that I'm dreaming about, long-term goals and the vision that we have that seems scary and daunting, but that's why we're trusting on the Lord's provision for us to see it done. So
Amen for that, Pastor Jake, and looking forward for more success and good luck to all your goals in life.
thank you.
And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be an author as well as want to be a pastor?
Wow, excellent questions. I'll speak to those who want to be an author first. You just have to start. There will never be a perfect time for all the books, for the book to be written. There will never be a perfect time where life finally settles down and slows down enough for you to crank out the book. There will always be an excuse for why now isn't the right time. You just have to start. You just have to start. There's that, and also outlining and planning is your best friend. You got it. I'm not an outliner. I just kind of whip off the head. No, you will get writer's block because you don't know what you're writing. If you don't have an outline, you need to spend a ton of time laying your foundation well and really map out a clear, detailed outline so that we can go from point A to point B by the end of the book. So if you got a book in you, it's time to just hunker down and write it. Find 30 minutes a day, even where you just sit down and you write it. You can edit it later. Who cares if it's crap at first? You just got to find time. You just got to do it. Get it done. That's why editors can be hired to make your work sound and read a lot better than what you put on the page. Thank God for my editor. She was amazing.
Yes.
For those who want to become a pastor, it is the greatest calling and vocation you could ever do. It is so hard. But man, when you get to hear stories of one of our students named Aaliyah, who was agnostic for her entire life and just didn't really get the whole God thing. And then when she had some crazy health issues with, hip dysplasia, just hit some all-time lows where she was no longer able to do, dance or the sports that she was in. She asked two of her good friends here at USD, like, how are you guys so happy? How do you get through all the things that you suffer in? And when she heard that, they said, well, because Jesus gives us our ultimate hope, that blew her mind. And it opened her up to what God could do. And we got to pray for her to receive Jesus, and her life has been completely transformed. Like, you cannot pay me enough. There's no amount of financial reward that can just get me out of this calling. Because that in itself is the fruit where you get to see life change. So it's just so good. And, there's different programs that you can go into to learn about how to be a pastor or all the theological training or the Bible and stuff. But there's so many different avenues for you to do it. But man, if you feel like you have that calling to go into this vocationally, where you get paid as as your full-time job to lead people to Jesus and to shepherd those flocks, it's such a great reward, and you should highly consider it. And especially ask people at your church and in your life if they can see that calling and if they can affirm it too. Because if other people believe it, then and they see it and they can affirm it, that's just more fuel on the fire for you to look into some of those options. So,
Pastor Jake, thank you so much for your advice. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
How many can I recommend?
Anything.
Oh my
Sky is
gosh.
the limit.
Sky is the limit. So a number that have been really influential for me, Spiritual Friendship by St. Alred is basically, it's this treatise written by a 12th century monk, so it's old. It's old,
Yes.
800 years old. But it really gets to the heart of just why we are designed for community with God and others in a beautiful way. So I love that. Highly recommend that. If you work with a lot of young adults, whether you have kids or whether you work in, college scenes or the high school or whatever, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, I think, is the most important book of our decade. As it really is pegging why are young adults so anxious and all the different things that have gone into that. I think that's incredibly important. If you're in ministry, anything by Eugene Peterson will just hit you like a ton of bricks. He is just a deep well. That's so good. If you're into fantasy, fiction, and leadership, one of the best leadership books I've ever read is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. It's a 1,000-page fantasy novel that will rock your socks off. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And you just learn so much about leadership through the process too. So Stormlight Archive is my favorite series of all time. Pick it up. You need to read them. And currently I'm working through princess bedtime stories with my daughters. So if you're looking for a good book for your kids, if you have daughters, Disney princess bedtime stories, 10 out of 10.
Yes,
I recommend.
indeed. Thank you for that recommendation, Pastor. And how can someone start healing if they have felt lonely for years?
The first thing that I would suggest is to find a church, actually.
Yes, true.
Whether you are into faith or not, sometimes what people ultimately leads them to faith, or even just to help remedy their loneliness at all. Like, you have to find communities that are ready to receive you um, and love on you regardless. And honestly, like, I can't think of a better place than a local church to meet you where you're at. Ideally, I know there's not always the case with churches, but we can't let the extremes versions of the church hinder us from checking out a church, because if a church is done right, they're going to see you, they're going to love you, they're going to be excited that you're there. In fact, studies show that people who attend church more regularly tend to be more connected and have lower rates of loneliness than those who don't. It's like, I
Yeah.
wonder why, because we're pursuing connection with each other while also worshiping the God who designed us to be in a relationship with him and others at the same time. So I think that's a really good spot to go. If you truly are lonely and you have no one in connection with you, you have just a clear slate, and the only thing you have are like your high school and college friends on Facebook that you haven't talked to in years. Don't try, like, the best way to remedy your loneliness is not through all the different group chats and things that you can do on social media. It is an illusion. You think you're connecting. It is not satisfying that God-given design for community of people in person. Those are good supplements for our friendships, but you cannot, it's basically like you're living off of Pringles, bread, and cheese nips for your diet. Like, you just can't survive, or at least feel nourished, eating all that stuff. It's the same thing with our friendships. You can't just strictly live off of digital connection. So do that. But then if you do have some people, maybe if your issue isn't that you have no friends, but rather your issue is that you don't have close friends, this sounds ridiculously simple, like horrifyingly simple. But all you need to do is identify, is there someone in your circle that you want to get closer to, get to know, and be the first one to make an invitation. You have to be the one to say, hey, would you like to grab coffee? Would you like to come over sometime? Would you like to get the kids together and for us to have a play date? Like, would love to get to know you. Would you be willing to take that first step? Because I think all of us who are lonely are really hoping that someone else will reach out and invite us into what they're doing. Well, if the loneliness epidemic is as pervasive as it is, maybe those people are also hoping for the same thing. So will you be the person to actually reach out? Will you be the person to make that first step? And then you never know. It could go off without a hitch, and you just found your new best friend. So you have to take those next steps and then find regular time to connect. Get it scheduled in your calendar. We make all this time for everything else. Like, we wouldn't miss, our time where we can binge our favorite Netflix series, or we take our kids to all the games. Like, we have all these external things that are scheduled for us, and yet we never have any time to schedule time for community. Well, if friendship and community is that important for our well-being, then maybe we need to say no to some of the other extracurricular things, so we can say yes to these incredibly important things to keep us fulfilled and energized for the long haul.
Very well said again, Pastor Jake. Truly, truly empowering. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season as well. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in its fifth season too. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and my Movie 101 review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Pastor Jake, what is your prayer for readers who feel isolated or who feel isolated but long for connection?
Yeah. Um, my prayer is that you realize your loneliness is not your destiny. You are not destined to loneliness. There's nothing wrong with you. There is not a condition that you have that is keeping you lonely. Your loneliness is simply a check engine light for your need for human connection. It's not anything about your character. It doesn't refer to anything about how you're not meant to be loved. It is just simply your body reminding you that you need friends. reminding you that it's time to get out there and find connection. So you're no longer wandering aimlessly in the world by yourself. That's what it is. So technically, when viewed that way, loneliness is a good thing. It's just as good of a thing for our bodies and our minds as hunger is to remind us that we need food, and thirst is to remind us that we need drink. Like, that is what's happening here. It is a physiological reminder that you need something to survive and to thrive. So I'm not saying, yeah, be lonely because it's good. It's when you view it through its actual theological and psychological lens, it is something that's trying to provoke us to deeper connection. So my prayer is that you realize that about yourself, and that you realize that there is so much more out there that can help you. There are people out there who truly will want to love you, and it might be hard work to try to dig in and to find that. But my prayer is that God will show up and will invite you into some of those other opportunities. So if you feel like there is a chance that shows up for you to jump into a deeper relationship of some sort, then take that step. You won't regret it.
Definitely take that step, people. And Pastor Jake Thurston, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your books, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so if you want to get my book, you can look it up on Amazon. Obviously, that's what Daniel has it pulled up here. Otherwise, you can visit www.youneedfriends.com to find more information about the book there. You can also find resources and a number of other teachings that I've done over the content. You can also contact me via that website, again, www.youneedfriends.com. Follow me on Instagram, pastor.jakethurston, and would love to stay in touch.
Yes, people, let's support Pastor Jake Thurston, because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering books like this to come, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Pastor Jake, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.